Hi there everyone, this is Alexis Kingsbury from the Parentpreneur Accelerator. Really excited to be sharing the first Ask Alexis with you today. I've got my whiteboard behind me. I'll explain a bit more about what that is, but right now I'm in my office at my home. Hopefully you can hear me okay, and we're going to need at various points to kind of look at the board and so on. If you can let me know how much of this kind of thing can you see? It's like, can you see all the way over here to this edge of the board and this edge, or are you seeing a square, which is what I see as a preview? So let me know. I can probably change the orientation, etc. To try and help on that. But do comment with questions, thoughts, issues with sound, issues with connection, and I can read it live in front of me. So what's this about? So this is a session that I'm piloting. It's the first one. If it works really well, I'll probably do more of them. But this is called Ask Alexis, and this is an opportunity for me to help parentpreneurs like yourselves to delve into some of the big questions that you've got about how to make your business more successful. And so over the last few days, I've been collecting questions from a variety of you on what's the big question that's stopping you right now, or that you're considering or spending mental energy on. And so I've had some fantastic questions coming through. I'm really pleased with the questions that we've had. And there's a particularly meaty one that has received a lot of votes on a poll that I put up, which is, when should I be considering getting investment for my business? And this is a really interesting question because there's so many facets to it. There's a bit of understanding about when investment is right for a business. There's about a bit of understanding around when investment is right for you as a parentpreneur. There's a bit of understanding about why you might even look into funding, and why what other things are probably going through your head, or what's the real obstacle that means that you're considering that as a solution. We can delve into that too. I'll also briefly introduce some of the different types that you can look at and how that then plays through what we're going to be talking about. And I'll share with you what you can do. I'll touch on how the first steps in terms of then looking at getting investment, but also particularly what you could do instead that is more likely to help you solve the problem that you think you're solving through getting investment. So it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Hit me with some comments. If you're watching live, then fantastic. Then I'll be able to respond to it live. If not, and this is you're watching the replay, that's great too. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be able to check those and respond to those as well. So welcome to the very first Ask Alexis, and please post in the comments. Let me know that you can see and hear me, and that how much of my whiteboard can you see? I can't tell. As I say, I've got this little preview that basically tells me it's like from there to about here, but hopefully you can see something. I can move it around. I've got you on a tripod, like you're standing in the room with me. Cool. So let's get started. So a reminder of the big question that I'm going to cover in this first Ask Alexis is, when should I consider getting investment for my business? Okay. So the first thing that I want to start with is some of the different types of investment that you could get, and I'm going to cover this really briefly. You can go online and ask that question. You'll get loads of blogs, etc. But it'll help for the context of what else we're going to do. So let's start off with some of the most common types. Now these are the most common types, and the one that you normally. There we go. Apparently my broadcast was paused, which is a shame, but hopefully you're back with me now. So the most common type that you'll normally be thinking about when you think about investment is equity, i.e. the Dragon's Den venture capital kind of model, where you turn up and say, I want some money into my business, and the investor, as a result, in exchange, gets a percentage of the shares, the equity in your business. And this is commonly what people talk about when they say, when should I get investment? Interestingly, of course, you're giving away equity if you bring in a co-founder or other co-founders or people that you give shares to. You might not think of it as getting investment, but you're certainly getting an investment of their time, which could have been bought for money. So in many ways, a co-founder can be seen in this a similar sort of way, except that hopefully there's sort of relationship and culture building, and it's important that your values align. But it's important that when you're thinking about investment, you're not just thinking about equity, but you're also aware that you can get loans. You can get, whether it's from yourself, but also family, friends, the bank, and also there are other organisations like Funding Circle and loads of others that will give you money, not for equity, but secured normally against assets either within your business, or particularly if you're early on, it could be on things like your house and whatever, that in exchange for getting that money back at some point, and they'll charge an interest rate to make sure that that's worth their while, and lending you that money. And then the third option is a grant. There are grants available for small businesses. Some of them are industry specific, technology specific, social enterprise, or non-profit or whatever specific. It's never free money though. It's always you've always got to be a little bit careful with the funding, the grants, and so on. There's always work involved, so that and your time isn't free. And also there may be requirements, restriction, caveats that require the money to be used in a particular way, or you to operate your business in a particular way. So do think about that as a form of investment, but don't think of it as being completely free. It has its own issues. So those are some types. When I talk about these various things about when you should be thinking about getting investment in your business, I'll talk mainly about sort of equity. However, you'll see that it largely applies to all of these three types of investment that you could be getting in your business. So, just before I move on, can you hear me and see me and so on? In fact, I'll grab my iPad and make sure that you can, because I'm paranoid about this, guys. This could be a massive waste of time if you can't. So let me check. Can you hear me and see me? Just post in the comments, let me know. I'm going to be checking on my iPad now. Let's have a look. There's only so much that you can see on a live video. Here we are. Ah, cool. I can see myself. Can I hear myself? Yes, I can. That could get annoying. Right, so I'm not going to be watching that. That'd be weird. But this guy's good. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to talk. We've talked about some of the common types of investment. That's going to provide us a bit of context. But next, I'm going to talk about when's the right time for your business to be getting investment, and I mean your business getting investment, not you. Well, I'm going to talk about you and whether it's right for you at all, and when the right timing is. But first, I want to talk about, for a business, for your startup, whatever stage it's at, what would mean that it would be a good time for it to consider investment. So I've broken this up into kind of 3 life cycle stages, if you like, for your business. The first is pre-revenue. So this is when you haven't sold a single item yet. So you're a brand new startup, you've got essentially an idea, maybe a plan, maybe even a team, but you certainly haven't got customers paying for your product yet. And so some companies get investment at that point, and the reason that they do that is because it's the kind of Dragon's Den thing where they come on and they say, I've got this brilliant idea, but to be successful it needs to go crazy big very quickly. For it to work, we need to be in multiple countries and and actually it needs to have a perhaps it's let's say it's software, perhaps there's a high cost in terms of getting the product to market. So as a result, it doesn't work for them to first get some customers that are paying, and that they can then be paying for the product, and as a result using that money to what's called bootstrap, which is where you use customers' money to and a bit of your own, but to reinvest in the business to grow it organically. Instead, you need so much investment, or you need to spend so much money in developing the product to begin with, that you need investment early on. Now, that problem exists in theory, and so if you've got those high development costs, that kind of makes sense. In fact, I can see we've got a comment that says, I can hear you, but it's a bit crackly. Let me just take my microphone again. There we go. Is that a bit better? Let me know. I'll carry on. Can you hear me okay? Cool. Might just move the camera. So in theory, there's a situation where you're pre-revenue, you haven't made sales, you've got such high development costs. Sorry, I'm pausing because it says not really, it's only a faint crackle. Is it this? To be like a really good microphone. It's a Rode video mic. It's designed for sort of working as a shotgun mic. Is it better without? It might be a bit more echoey. Is it better without, or would you prefer it with this this little microphone? Let me know in the comments. That's it. It's gone. Okay, this is gone too. It's 50 quid of waste of space. Right. So as long as you can hear me, I'll carry on. Pre-revenue. In theory, you could have high development costs, and so you might say, oh well, that's a worthwhile thing to do, right? You want investment in the business to pay for building it. The problem is that actually, if you're thinking about getting investment at that stage, it's probably because you don't believe that you can get pre-orders, that you can get customers giving you money before you've got that product. And pretty much in all cases, that's wrong. In all cases, you should be able to validate that there's real demand for your product by getting customers in advance. If you don't believe me, go along to kickstarter.com, where you'll find millions, indeed even I think they're up to like hundreds of millions of pounds, that are being invested in products that don't exist yet. And what they're doing there is they're validating that there's real demand for their product before they then go and build it. And actually, the answer might then be, actually, yes, we do need investment to then develop it, perhaps through the money through the Kickstarter plus some additional funds. But in many cases, you might even find that you can fund it through Bootstrap. But what you shouldn't be doing is working entirely based on an idea, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit when we talk about the key to getting the money. So that's a situation that might exist for you, where you haven't got revenue yet, the development costs of developing what you're doing are so high that you need investment. Another situation, which is perhaps more likely, because if you believe this is the situation for you, like message me, let's talk about it, because I suspect that's not the case. It's pretty rare, okay, particularly for parentpreneurs. The other situation might be that you're pre-profit. So you've got customers that are paying money, but you're not profitable yet. And this is a situation that's likely if you've got high fixed costs, and particularly if you kind of need volume in your business. So if you're like an app business where you're like, okay, it's a £3 app, we need to sell quite a lot of them to get to a point where we make the money, but then it's very low, if pretty much zero direct costs. It doesn't cost us to serve additional customers, really. It's marginal. The main cost is just doing business. But because you've got such a low price point, at like £3, it takes a bit of time to get there. So that's a situation in which investment might be right for you, is that you've proven that you can get revenue and that there's customer demand. And so now you need to be able to cover your fixed costs to exist long enough, and to be able to invest in getting enough customers that means it covers your fixed cost and gets you to a point of profit. So that would be a situation for your business where it would then make sense to get investment. The other situation is actually that you're profitable. You've got a profitable startup. It not only does it get revenue, people buy it, but actually the amount of revenue you make is at a good enough margin and net profit margin, you've got low enough costs, that you're actually making a profit. But you might be in a situation where either it's not a lot of profit yet, or it is, but there's an opportunity to grow. Now, if you're in that situation where you're making a small amount of profit, you're only really sort of a good candidate for investment, both for the investor but also for your purposes, if you've got a non-incremental scalable model, and I'll explain what that is in a second. So, the reason. So what this means is that when you're in a situation where you've worked out for your business what you need to do to grow and get a load more customers, and you've worked out that there's a particular model that needs money into it to then help you to grow. However, it has to be non-incremental, because if it's incremental, like if you're making money, if you're getting your customers through Facebook ads, let's say. So let's say that you've worked out that if you spend £100 on Facebook ads, that gets you X many customers at X price point, and that delivers you a profit that exceeds the amount that you spend. So let's say that £100 in gets you 150 out. Now that's great, that's awesome, because that means that now for every £100 in you get 150 out, which means that you've got that same 100 to put back in plus £50 profit, which you can reinvest, which means 150 goes in, and then you get even more out, and you keep on going. Now if you've got that, why would you get investment? Why would you give away equity or give away interest when you can just keep on putting your money in and going and getting it? In fact, you might go for a loan if you can get, if the rate that you're getting through putting the money in and turning it over in your model will get the money out faster than the interest that you would pay, and that can be really good. Whereas equity can be rubbish for that, because you're giving away a big chunk of your business right now in exchange for a big lump of cash, which actually, if you had just gone organically, you could probably get anyway. Okay, so so that's the reason that you'd have that. Now, there's a lot of people out there that think, oh well, I've just got a bit of I've got a bit of profit. And I've got to a profit, maybe now I need to take the next step. But you can't get investment unless you've got this scalable model, unless you've worked out what this non-incremental scalable model is, i.e. what's the thing that you need to do that will suddenly get you a load more customers. And so it might be, for example, that you've demonstrated that a particular business model where you do there was an example, try and remember the name, I think is it Hassle.com? They worked out a particular model where they'd go city by city. So they would combine bus and billboard and TV and radio advertising in a very specific location for a specific period, and there was a particular process that they ran in advance of that involved getting the supply side covered before they then got a load of the demand within a very compressed time period. Now, that's not incremental for them. They can't start by going into the next country or the next city in a relatively small way. It's not like, oh well, we'll just do a billboard ad. It needed all to go together. So for them, it made sense for them to get investment, because they'd got this model and they just needed to carbon copy that and apply it in different cities and do Paris and London and Manchester and so on. But I think they started in Manchester, didn't they? So that works really well when you've got that scalable model. Like, for example, there's a friend of mine who owns essentially a travel agent type business, and they've worked out a model that works in a very country specific way, and with all the language and the translation and whatever. But the cost of then replicating that whole thing, it's a big chunk of cost. You can't do it in a small way. So as a result, it made sense to get millions of pounds to then sort of do that big thing in the next country. But note that there's evidence there. They've proven the model, and I'm going to talk about more of that in a second. So those are kind of the situations where you might be with your business when investment works really well. However, the key factor across all of these comes down to what's it for? What's the money for? Because if you're not clear on that, then why should anyone give it to you? If you say to me, I want 100 grand, I'm going to say, cool, what for, right? You've got to have a strategy. You've got to be clear on what it is that is going to be the thing that makes your business successful. So whether it's, oh, I've got this city model of expansion, and as a result, that's what I want to replicate. Or whether it's the strategy is to go big very quickly across a global reach, like a sort of Twitter kind of style. And so that's the strategy. Or maybe it's actually, we've got a product, we've got demand, the strategy is to get a whole load of customers quite quickly so that we can cover these high fixed costs of doing business. So you need a strategy, but that doesn't work on its own. You also need evidence. You can't just say, oh, well, I think it's a good idea, I think people will buy. Instead, you need to have proof based on, normally, customer validation or evidence that you can make profit, or customer validation or evidence that that you can make profit based on a model and how it works, so that you can show that that strategy is not just a nice idea, it's something that actually works. And that's really important, because I think a lot of people think, like the Dragon's Den set, they go on, they go, oh, here's my great idea, and the dragons are asking questions, and they're just looking for this. They're saying, what orders have you got? Okay, you said that Boots bought 10, why didn't they buy 10,000? And that's what people are looking for in terms of for the evidence and what investors are looking for. So you've got to have a strategy, you've got to have evidence for why that strategy would work, and then finally you need a plan. You need to know exactly how this strategy would be put in place and how as a result the money would be used to execute it. You need to know how many people you're going to need to deliver that model in the next country, or how much money you're going to need to spend on what marketing channels to suddenly get a load more customers, or how you're going to spend the money to develop the product that's got these high development costs, and why you're confident that that's a reasonable estimate of what your costs are going to be. So you need the strategy, you need evidence, and you need a clear plan of what you can do. If you're in the right place in your business and you've got these three things, then it becomes pretty much an easy thing for someone to invest in. Because if I was investing in your business and I can see that, let's say, this one I don't like, right? There are investors that do this kind of stuff, but it's really hard to get investment at this stage. And even Gary Vaynerchuk was on a video recently. He was explaining how he passed off on Uber twice, and that despite the fact the CEO or the owner was like one of his best friends from his local hometown. It wasn't like he didn't know him or trust him or whatever. It's that they were too early on, and there's too much risk involved. Now there are other reasons, like the fact that Gary felt that the owner was putting too much stall in this other guy that was trying to get to run it and so on. But fundamentally, if they've got evidence of stuff working, when you start getting this, then it becomes a lot easier to invest. And in fact, people start queuing up. But if you're in a situation where you come to me and you say, well, I've got a profitable business, I've worked out a model, this is how it makes money, and so now I just need to get a load of money to do that, and I can see that putting £1,000 of Google AdWords spend gets me £2,500 back, as it does for like one of my software businesses, or that 40 grand spent on Facebook ads gets 120 grand back, as one of my friends was telling me the other day that he's getting. Then it becomes a much easier thing. It's like, oh, cool. So you just need the cash now, and then it's coming out either as a loan potentially, or if you've got these grander plans and whatever, maybe it's equity. But you can see that once you're clear on what it's for and you've got the evidence, you've got that plan, it becomes a lot easier to invest in you. So that's when it will be the right time for your business. But it might not be the right time for you. And this is probably the most important point. Because as the parentpreneur, you might be thinking, oh yeah, well that sounds easy. I just need to be at one of these stages and then have this really clear plan on how we make the money and what we do, and then the investor invests, right? And that is true. But the problem is the investment right for you? And what I want to share is the fact that a lot of, in fact, a friend of mine who's currently about to get £2 million pounds of investment in his business, he was saying maybe this would help your parentpreneurs. He said a lot of people don't think about. He said oh, you know, myself included, when I first started, they only think about themselves as having the problem, and they think about the investor as providing the solution. Okay, think about that. They think about themselves as having the problem and the investor providing the solution in the form of cash. But actually, it works both ways. The investor has a problem too that you're helping them to solve. And that problem is that they've got a load of cash that's not doing anything for them. So they might have a couple of million, let's say it's sat in the bank, and it's earning 1% or less. Okay? It's doing nothing. Now, even just based on inflation and all that kind of stuff, it could be even losing them money, or at least it's not growing, and that's a problem. And particularly if you're talking about a venture capital company or other form of professional organisation of investment, who they're promising returns to the people who are lending them the money. Right? So whether it's a pension fund or whatever, it's like they're promising these returns, and so they need to get these returns. So the problem that they have is they've got a load of money and they haven't got these engines for growth. They haven't got, like a bit of, like over here, they haven't got that proven, they haven't got that model available that they can just chuck cash into. So you've got to think about them as being a sort of party in this. It isn't just what do you want and can the investor give it? It's like, how do your goals align? Because if they don't align, then it's unlikely that investment's going to be a good fit for you. Because the investor's going to want you to do things or to behave in certain ways or run the business in certain ways that don't fit for what you want to do, which means that investment's unlikely to be a good fit. So let me illustrate that. So the first thing I want to talk about is ambition and vision. So this is the extent to which you and the investor have a similar view of where your business should get to. Because investors generally will be, particularly if you're talking about equity, they will want a very high return. And that's because investing in your business is probably quite risky. And so they will have, let's say, 30 to 60 other investments. And the idea for them is not that all of them grow by double, but that one of them grows by 100 times. And some of them, like half of them just sort of bumble along and half die, right? So a little bit like at Y Combinator in the cohort of Dropbox, for example. They had 64 startups. One of them's Dropbox and makes like crazy 100 billion, right? And the others don't make it. There might be a couple of success stories in there with a few million, but that's not what the investors are out for. They make the money off the one that goes big. Now, that means that an investor's going to be pushing for really big plans. They don't want to see a strategy and a plan that basically says you're looking to grow to 5 million, 10 million. Okay? They want to be seeing 50 million, 100 million plus. Because if they're going to make their money back with an investment, let's say investing £1 million for 20% of your business, that means that they can need that to go, the value of your business to increase significantly so that they can get a decent enough return. And that may not align with you. You might think, well, actually, no, I'd be happy if I can grow the business to 5 million. That'd be great. And they'd be really disappointed with that. So you've got to have alignment on that. Which brings on to another area that you need alignment on is lifestyle. A lot of parentpreneurs, one of the reasons that they're in business is that they're able to have this awesome, flexible lifestyle. Like, for example, I'll be stopping today at 12:30 so that I can go spend time with my wife and kids, and we'll walk down into Stamford and go to the food market that's on in the Meadows. And that's something I can do because, I've kind of designed my business that way. But if you've got an investor that they want their pound of flesh, they're putting 2 million into your company, they don't want to see you, posting on Facebook, sitting on a lilo in a swimming pool. They want to see you hustling like 18-hour days. So if you're in a situation where actually investors are looking for a very different lifestyle from you than what you would like, then that can be a reason that investment might not be right for you now, maybe ever. And finally, exit. An investor
needs an exit. At some point, they've got to realise the return on their investment. Now, with a loan, that can be easy. It's like just paying out regularly. They're getting their interest, plus if it includes the amount of the total invested as well, then they're getting that out. And at some point, let's say 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, they will have recouped that entire amount plus some interest. That works, and that can be great for most businesses because, particularly for parentpreneurs, because it means that they don't need to sell the business to be able to pay back. The problem is that for equity investment, you need to plan to sell. At some point, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, there needs to be a plan to sell the business so that the people who have got their shares get the cash, or potentially shares in whatever business buys it, but then only because they expect to be able to exit that one, like through, if it goes IPO and it's on the stock exchange, they can buy and sell shares there and so on. But ultimately, it needs to be sold at some point so that they can realise the investment. Now, for some of you, that may work. You may be like, you know what, I don't care that much about running a business. I care about my customer, I care about the product, but really I kind of see myself doing this for 10 years and then getting out and then go live on a yacht somewhere, and that's how I want to spend the rest of my life. If you're like me, actually that doesn't appeal. I like running the business. I really enjoy it. It gives me a buzz. I love helping the people that I help. So the idea of selling this business doesn't appeal to me at all. That doesn't work for an equity investor, because it means that if they invest £1 million in my business for 25%, at some point they want to be able to sell that 25%. Unless I plan, unless I'm going to come up with some contract agreement where on a particular date I have to buy them out or whatever, it's not going to work, right? They look for the fact that at some point I sell the business to a third party. And I'd never do that with my business. So would you do that with yours? Do you want an exit? Do you want to get out? If you do, then maybe you do have alignment. But it's a really tricky one, because sometimes people talk about getting investment at the time that they want to exit their business. They're like, oh, I'm so fed up of this. I think if I could just get investment, then I can grow it and then I can get out. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. The investor wants that strategy and plan, and you're a big part of that. They want to see you doing it. Might be a problem with lifestyle. They want to see you doing it and getting the results before you can then have your lifestyle and exit. So if you're thinking, oh, yeah, I've fallen out of love with my business, so I'll get some investment, that's probably not going to work. So it's a really tricky one, because you've got to love your business enough that you're going to stay in it to try and realise the vision. But at the same time, you've got to be willing to at some point know that you're going to let it go. And that can be tough. So if you've got alignment on those things, then investment might be right for you. And it might be the right time. And if you've got the right time for your business, you've got a strategy that you know works, you've got evidence for that, you've got a plan for how it would work, and you've got alignment on these things, then yes, it might be the right thing for you to get investment in your business. More likely, at some point, you've twigged the fact that actually your business doesn't fit into one of these categories. Or that one of these things doesn't align, and that you're unlikely to find an investor that's going to be on the same page as you for some of these. So let's talk about, what are you really looking for? Because I suspect that the reason that you're looking at investment isn't because your business needs investment. You're looking at investment because you think it's easier than getting customers. Or you think that investment is what businesses are meant to do. Or you think that investment is the way that businesses get big or successful or profitable. Or you think that investment is going to make it more fun or enjoyable or whatever. Or that investment is the way that you can get insight from experts on how to run your business. And the truth is that all of those things can be achieved far more easily than getting investment. All of those things. And so if you're in a situation like the customer one, investment is not the best way to identify whether or not customers are going to buy your product. Selling your product, even if it's getting pre-orders, is a much, much better way. And in fact, investors would probably want to see that anyway. If perhaps you've got pre-orders, but the issue is growth, then you still need to have a strategy for how you're going to get that growth, how you're going to get more customers, and investors will want to see that plan. And if you can come up with that plan, then you can probably do that plan. So don't think that investment provides the holy grail for that. Equally, if you think that, oh well, to get big, to get profitable, I need investment. Remember that actually if you can find a scalable model that's incremental, like AdWords, pay-per-click, or Facebook ads, or even just that you've worked out how going to events or doing speaking engagements, whatever, if you've worked out that actually there's an incremental model, then you can just keep reinvesting the cash and you will grow it. And actually that can be a lot less stressful than suddenly having to work out how you're going to spend £1 million to do the same, and doesn't have some of these issues. Expertise is an interesting one, because actually a lot of people think, oh well, yeah, I'd go on the Dragon's Den so that I've got a Theopathetus or a Peter Jones sat there with me helping me run the business. And the reality is that those investors will want to see you developing and getting insight from more than just them. They don't want to become an employee in your business, or indeed a low-paid coach. Of course they'll provide advice and steering and so on, but actually I'm yet to see a single successful entrepreneur that hasn't had either a mentor or a coach, someone on a regular basis that's providing that guidance. And actually sometimes it's helpful if they're not invested, because it means that they're not in a situation where you kind of want to hold back because you don't want to tell them quite how bad the situation is, because it's their cash in the business. And actually sometimes it's more valuable to have someone either in a mastermind program or in an accelerator like the ones I run, or a coach or a mentor or whatever, who you can be honest with and that they can be honest with you. So don't think that that's the way to get that insight, is to have to get investment and give away equity and so on. So that's the question I want you to think about. If you're thinking about this question of investment, think about what you're really looking for. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? What's the thinking that you've currently got that means you were even considering investment to begin with? Because that's where the value is. That's where challenging that will get you the results. That's where you'll realise that actually there are better solutions, like getting some pre-orders, like testing different channels and seeing what works as gives a return on investment that you can reinvest in, like going and finding an expert, a coach, a mastermind, or whatever that can support you in your growth. Those solutions are quicker, easier, cheaper than getting investment, and should be seriously considered. So what's the real problem? I want you to post in the comments. What's the reason that you think investment might work for your business? What's the situation that you're in? What's the problem you're trying to overcome? And share that in the comments and I'll try and help. So instead, you've got all those kind of options for growing your business that don't require investment. And I've talked about some of those. And of course, don't forget that you've got loans as well to consider. That it doesn't have to be that kind of equity investment, and loans that can be a lot easier to get. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to get a loan because I don't want to put my house on the line. And it's like, well, the reason you're not willing to do that is because you haven't got this one. You haven't got evidence. And if you're not confident that you can get the results, i.e. that you've proven it, you've shown a model, then why would an investor? Right? So it doesn't work like, oh yeah, but I don't want to give away my house. It's like, it's all connected, okay? So those are my thoughts on when you should consider getting investment. So there's lots of different types of investment for you to consider. It isn't just about equity. Secondly, there are different stages for your business that might be good times for you to get investment, but it's not always. It requires certain criteria, whether it's high development costs, high fixed costs, having a scalable model that's non-incremental and you can't just put some money back into it. Those might be reasons. Don't forget that the key to getting the cash is that you've got a strategy, you've got evidence to support why that strategy works, and that you've got a detailed plan of exactly how that money will be used to get the results. Don't forget that as a parentpreneur, there's lots of reasons why you might not have aligned goals with the investor, whether it's on your ambition or vision for the business, whether it's your plan and desires for the lifestyle that you have, whether it's your plans for the extent to which you're going to want to exit. And so really I want you to think about what are you really looking for? What's the problem that you are trying to solve through investment, and what could you do instead? So I hope you found that useful. It's been fun talking about it, and if you've got other questions, then post them in the comments. I'd love to answer them on the, we're short of time, so I'm probably not going to get a chance to cover much more now, but I will do both in the comments, and also if you liked this, then tell me. If Ask Alexis was a good idea and that this has been interesting or useful, tell me and I'll do another one. If you don't tell me that, I'll just get paranoid and upset and decide that it's a complete waste of time. So, hope you found that interesting, useful. Yeah, post in the comments. Let me know. Was it good? Did you were you able to hear me? Maybe I was on mute the whole time. I didn't know. Let me know. Yeah, the other thing that I'll do is if it did work, and you do want me to do another one, let me know. Then do invite other people into this group. This one here, the Parentpreneur Accelerator community, is designed for all parentpreneurs. It's not just my customers. It's not just people that know me or whatever. It's for, if you know someone that's a parentpreneur, they want to grow their business, they want to have more time with their kids, add them to the group, and then they can ask questions too. They can get access to this material, and that's all free just because I want to help you guys, right? I've got a question, which is Lara. Hi there, Lara. Cool, so you said, yes, enjoyed it, thanks. Helpful to get us thinking about the bigger picture rather than just thinking I need investment or it's the right time investment. Awesome, glad to hear it. And you've asked a question, which is, if someone was to decide that they do want investment and there is a valid need, where would they need to look for it? Great question. So assuming all of this is true and that you're in that situation, there are some different people that you would potentially need to talk to. And equally, depending on this side of the equation as well, whether or not you've got aligned goals and the type of investment that you need to look for. Now, the common ones to look at are obviously, if you're looking at low amounts of money needed, then it might be business angels, seed funds and so on that can give you anything from 10 grand to 100, 200, maybe 300,000 pounds. If you start to need more than that, then for, particularly if you're at the, I've got this non-incremental scalable model that I want to expand, and you start to get into the chasm. So there's kind of a gap between 300,000 and about 2 million because of this problem, right? At this level, you need a relatively small amount of money, like sub 300,000, to help you to prove that you can make a profit. At this level, you suddenly need a lot of money to do some really big things, and it doesn't work to kind of we'll put in $1 million and see what happens. So at this stage, it starts to be 2 million plus, and there's some books about the chasm of investment. Now, but I'm blanking on any of the titles. I'm trying to remember whether it's crossing the chasm, but I think that's something slightly different, which is about early adoption and so on. But at that stage, then you're starting to look at VCs, so venture capitalists and other organisations that are similar to that, that they can put in very large amounts in exchange for relatively, not huge amounts of equity, unlike, say, a co-founder or a business angel who look for a significant chunk. There are also loads of other ways of sort of getting more like crowdfunding. So those are some of the things to consider. I think Rocket Hub was one, and there's a load of crowdfunding platforms where you can post, this is what I want to do, and get investment. People talk about Kickstarter as being a crowdfunding platform. It is and it isn't. Because you're not giving away equity. Instead, you're generally giving away product, which is really like you're just getting pre-orders. I mean, you're just selling the product before it exists, which is what I'd recommend doing anyway, regardless of whether you're using Kickstarter or not. So you can look at crowdfunding. You can look at VCs, you can look at business angels, you can look at seed investment companies, you can look at funding loan companies like Funding Circle and so on, that can provide loans and or equity and all this kind of stuff. So you've kind of got loads of options there. The best thing to do is, if you're in a serious position where you can do this, get some advice. Don't do this half-assed, right? Because getting investment for your business is a huge thing to do. It's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of emotional energy, and finding the right fit is important. You're not going to want to just go with the first investor that comes along. You're going to want to get a lot of options so that you can make the right decision. So get advice. Find people that have already got investment, taken investment before. Find people that know the area enough that they can provide you guidance, and if necessary, pay for that advice. Okay, it's going to pay dividends in the long term, quite literally. If you don't get that, then you're likely to either waste a lot of time or end up with the wrong answers. So hopefully that answers your question, Lara. Any other questions, anything I can cover, just post it in the comments area and I'll do that. But hopefully you found this really useful. Please let me know if it's been useful. If you took away a nugget, post about it in the comments and let me know what other questions you've got. I'd love to help. But yeah, it's been great sharing with you. Yeah, if you like this, then see you on the next Ask Alexis. Cheers, bye. Oh, we have one more question. There we go. Yeah, we've got enough time. One more question. How about grants, etc.? Where can we have something for free without taking out credit, giving away part of the business, or giving away free services? Cool. Be really careful with this one. You know the saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch? That's true. And so even when you're talking about getting a grant or some kind of, that kind of free funding, seed capital from those companies, it's never without cost. At the very minimum, it's going to take a lot of your time. And I know companies that have spun their wheels for years because the CEO has basically spent all of his time going out trying to drum up investment or funding. And he spends all his time doing that rather than focusing on getting customers and getting to a position of profit so that actually investors start coming to you or people who want to fund you. So the time should be factored in when you think about it as being, is it free? Having said that, there are government and European Commission grants for certain types of businesses. Look, you can go on the Gov website and the EC websites and take a look at that. It depends largely on your industry and the type of product and the customers and the business model, etc. that you've got. So for example, I worked with a training business who they were able to get back then, I think the funding might have dried up now, but it was a train to gain funding, which meant that they were able to get funding on behalf of their customers so that the training for their customers was in part or in full paid for by the government. And then there was some EIS funding that I think came through the European Union. Again, similar sort of thing. So when we talk about grants and funding, it's not always just a case of they hand you a big chunk of cash, like, here's $100,000 for your startup business. Often it'll be baked into other things, like the way in which, like getting funding on behalf of customers. But again, it's never free, and that training business basically ended up with a 4-man department just managing the admin associated with that funding, and that was fine. It was worth it. But when the funding started drying up, it really caused a problem for their business. So that's the other thing to think about, is the sustainability of that funding. And again, what's it for? Do you need a big chunk of cash to do something specific and you've got a strategy and evidence and a plan? Great. If not, and it's just like, the cash would be good, that starts to, that can cause a problem for your business. Because then when you've spent the money, you're then without it and you have to work out what you do next. And I know there's a lady who runs a sort of events business where she runs workshops and so on. And she relied heavily on funding. And that was kind of fine, and she scraped along when that was the case. But then when the funding dried up, she then realised, well, I haven't got a profitable business. Customers aren't paying me more than it costs to run it. So now she's in a situation where she's desperate for funding, and will take anything she can get, regardless of the strings attached and whatever. And actually, for that business, I think unless she fundamentally changes how it's organised and how it makes profit, it won't succeed, and the funding will just prolong the death. So it's so those things are available. It's worth checking, government websites and whatever that have those. They tend to be really good at explaining how you can get hold of the money, but there tends to be a lot of requirements. It's not like you turn up and they go, hey, you're a new startup business, here's 50 grand. You need business plans and all this sort of stuff that if you were just running the business and getting customers, you'd get the money anyway. It's through my Startup Accelerator, the average amount that someone gets in pre-orders after going through the 6-week program is, last time I checked, it was about 4 grand. So as a result, they're getting 4 grand on average from their customers that then pays for them to develop the product, to then deliver it to those customers. And then in my Path to Profit program, I've got people who are going through it where they use that money to develop the product, they deliver the product, they do an awesome job, the customer's really happy, and then they work out, okay, what would work for you well next? And as a result, they sell them the next one, which gets them more money, which they can then reinvest. And as a result, they're creating a profitable business because it's got customers that will actually pay money, plus they've got capital that they can use to actually build the product that they've just sold. And then when they get more customers in the other end, they've got a profitable business that turns out money that they can reinvest. So it does exist, but just be really careful. Don't think that this funding route is the easy route, or that it's free, or that it doesn't put requirements on you. Do your research, and particularly be really clear about what it's for and why you're using it and so on. So unless there's any more questions, thank you for all those. Really appreciate it. Do post more in the comments, and I'll keep chatting on there. But thanks very much for watching this video, and look forward to helping you over the course of the next few days and weeks. Cheers, bye.